In the late 19th century, Africa became the center of one of the most aggressive land grabs in human history. But what makes it even more shocking is that much of the continent was divided in a single meeting, with no African leaders present. This moment, known as the Berlin Conference, reshaped the fate of millions, and its consequences are still visible today in borders, conflicts, and economic struggles across the continent. By the 1880s, European powers were racing to expand their empires. Driven by industrialization, they needed raw materials, new markets, and strategic territories. Africa, rich in resources like gold, rubber, and ivory, became the ultimate prize. Countries like Britain, France, Germany, and Belgium began claiming coastal regions and pushing inland, often clashing with each other. To avoid war between European nations, Otto von Bismarck of Germany invited major powers to Berlin in 1884. What followed was a 3-month conference where diplomats sat around a table and drew lines across an entire continent. They barely understood. There were no African representatives, no input from the people whose lands were being divided. It was diplomacy for Europe, but disaster for Africa. The rules they created formalized colonization. One key principle was effective occupation, meaning a country could only claim land if it had actual control there. This pushed European powers to rapidly invade and establish authority across vast territories. Treaties were signed often under coercion or deception with local leaders who did not fully understand what they were agreeing to. One of the most brutal outcomes came under King Leopold II, who personally controlled the Congo Free State under the guise of humanitarian work. In reality, it became one of the most exploitative regimes in history. Millions of Congolese were forced into labor, harvesting rubber under horrific conditions, with violence, mutilation, and death used to enforce quotas. This was not an exception. It was a reflection of how colonial systems operated across much of Africa, prioritizing profit over human life. By the end of the conference, almost all of Africa had been claimed on paper. Within a few decades, European powers had established control over about 90% of the continent. Traditional systems of governance were dismantled. Economies were reshaped to serve colonial interests, focusing on extraction rather than development. Infrastructure like railways was built not to connect people, but to transport resources out of Africa to European industries. The long-term consequences have been profound. Many modern African borders still follow the lines drawn during the Berlin Conference. These borders often group together diverse ethnic communities with little shared history or separate groups that once lived together. This has contributed to political instability, civil wars, and ongoing tensions in various regions. Even after independence in the 20th century, many African nations struggled with systems that were never designed for unity or self-governance. Economically, the impact has also been lasting. Colonial powers extracted vast wealth while investing little in local development, leaving many countries with weak institutions and limited industrial bases. This created dependency patterns that continue to influence global trade relationships today, where raw materials are exported and finished goods are imported at higher costs. Yet despite this history, Africa is not defined by victimhood. Across the continent, nations have shown resilience, creativity, and growth, challenging outdated narratives and building new futures. Movements to reclaim cultural identity, rewrite history, and strengthen regional cooperation are gaining momentum. The story of the Berlin Conference is not just about division. It is about understanding how the past shapes the present, and why acknowledging it is essential for a more balanced and just global future. Because in just one meeting, a continent was carved up without consent. But the story does not end there. It continues in every border, every nation, and every effort to reclaim agency and redefine what Africa can become on its own terms, free from the shadows of lines drawn in a distant room over a century ago.